Good morning, everyone. Suzanne Taylor King here for another live Friday episode of Unlock Your Way with STK. And I am really excited for today's conversation with the first ever second time guest on the show, Kevin Maney. And he is the co founder of Category Design Advisors. Prolific author, has a new book out, and we're going to get into it today. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thanks, Suzanne. I appreciate it. I feel like, one of those guests on Saturday Night Live that's touting, I've been on 5 times, whatever. I
Oh,
can.
well, that could be a thing. That could be. I might argue that that's my category design
There you
formula.
go.
I
There you
like
go.
that. I like that. Well, everyone who knows me knows I am a huge fan of authentic genius. I'm a huge fan of really niching down your business and being the only person who uniquely does what you do, which is category design for those of you that don't know. And let's touch on a little bit of how this originally came to you, how category design came into your life.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Good question. Um, so I started life as a journalist covering IBM, actually, in my hometown of Binghamton, New York.
Mhm.
And so then spent, decades covering the tech industry, meeting a lot of interesting people, writing some handful of books.
Mhm.
And at some point, we're talking, what was this been? 2014. I got a call for a message from an old friend, Al Ramadan, who I'd met a decade before when he had a company called Quacka Sports. Thought he was one of the smartest people out there about how the internet was going to change our sports viewing experience.
Oh, wow.
And he said, well, I've been doing something interesting. I've been working with these other two guys, Dave Peterson and Chris Lockhead. And we advise companies, we advise startups. And we have this concept or this
Mhm.
starting point, which was, so after covering tech for a very long time, when he said this, I kind of inherently knew, like, yeah, this is actually really true. And that starting point was that in most markets, and especially in digital markets where everybody can, from all over the world, can access whatever you're offering.
Yeah.
In any particular category, market category, one company tends to take, let's say, ballpark it, 3/4 of the
Mhm.
economics of that category, right? There's one huge play. There's an Uber, there's an Airbnb, there's a Salesforce that not only wins almost all of the pricing power and the economics and the market share, but also sets the tone for the category.
Yeah.
And so what they said to me, we had dinner in San Francisco, and they said, so we've been trying to advise startups that if that's the case, why wouldn't you want to do everything you can to be that company?
Mhm.
And there's no guarantees, but why wouldn't you do everything to increase your odds that you're that company that wins the category, because that's where all the stakes are. And so they had a handful of interesting concepts. Some of them were connected, some of them were just kind of a little bit random, but
Mhm.
we said, like, there's probably an interesting thing to explore here. And so the four of us started working together and really just basically trying to reverse engineer how the greats of, the Mark Benioffs and
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos's and Reed Hastings created new categories and defined them, and kind of take that apart, and also just drew on our personal experiences through the things that we've done in our lives, and started to put together this thing that we called category design, and we were the ones who labeled it. The other guys remember this clearly. They credit me. I can't say that I remember that, but we were
Uh-huh.
having a conversation, and Al, who used to work at Macromedia, um, we were like halfway, 3/4 of the way through the book, and he said, like, this something's really bugging me. It's sort of like the conversations we were having at Macromedia when we created something called experience design, which ended up catching on and being a big part of the industry.
Mhm.
And I guess I was the one who piped up and said, well, maybe this is category design. And everybody's like, that's it.
What
And,
did you call it before that?
well, we didn't call it anything. We were
You
just
didn't
kind of,
call it anything. Okay.
yeah, we were just
Okay.
like, this was all about how do you create category winners.
Wow.
And so anyway, the result of all of that was the book Play Bigger, which came out in 2016 and set all of this in motion. And category design has become a thing. We actually essentially designed the category of category design, and now it's like a big part of the tech ecosystem.
Yeah, well, number 1, I love the meta concept that, designing category design is a category design,
So,
which is really cool. But more than that, I think the new book, um, I read Play Bigger maybe a couple of years after it came out. And this new book is really based on well over 10 years of actually working with clients. And did you notice a big, when you first started working with clients through this concept, what big changes did you notice? Like boots on the ground, we all know that a framework is a framework when you design it in your head. But when you actually start doing it with clients, what was the biggest shift you noticed?
the biggest shift I think was, so we had written Play Bigger. It was, it gave people this concept of category design and the importance of it, and it made people think about it. But so the book came out, and it immediately started resulting in like CEOs and venture capitalists and others getting in touch and saying, could you please help us do what this
Mhm.
is about? And so we started, like, I started Category Design Advisors with another guy named Mike Downfaus, and we started working, doing, client work. And I think the biggest thing was that we had trouble shaping the discussion because it was
Mm,
a little amorphous. Like, it was like, I mean, the ideas were there, but there wasn't a set of like thinking tools and structures to say, like, here's what, here's how we can discuss this and get to this finishing point, step by step.
yeah.
And so I think that's what we started working through and doing more research. Part of it, half of it was doing more research about how categories work, tapping into some of what some of the, greats have written about or in the past, understanding how categories behave. And the other part of it was literally trying stuff out in the room with clients.
Yeah.
And and seeing some of the things we came up with just fell flat, didn't really work. And then we found some things that were like, whoa, like that actually, like, that really drives the conversation. It's really sticking. And then we would double down and like try to figure out why, and refine those ideas. And all of that is what's made it into this new book.
Well, I'm amazed because I really think, and I've said this hundreds of times, literally, that after working with 100 clients, you'll know. You'll have so much information, on your process, on your thinking, what it takes to not only teach that thinking, implement that thinking with another person, because we know what we're doing, right? We have all the ideas, and maybe it's an unconscious, ability sometimes, and to decipher that with actual clients. I started doing something after clients, like a debrief, before AI. Now AI can help me with that, but I would record my thoughts and impressions after certain steps in my program. I guess that means it's time to write a book after a certain number of clients, I guess, right? But I love the thinking here because it does really get refined with boots on the ground work. And because you're not just a theory guy, you're actually out in the world doing it. I think it makes the category that you've created for yourself really stand out. Do you think that's part of the popularity of this concept that has really caught on because you're actually doing it in the world and it's
Oh
not
yeah, I
just
think it's been
theory?
important, and because it's become a proof point, right?
Yeah.
And what's happened is the companies go through this and they come out the other end. It's like they feel transformed, and
Mhm.
then I mean, we we as a firm have done so little marketing because it's basically word of mouth. I mean, and one CEO tells another CEO, "You guys got to call." That's what
Yeah.
happens, right? So yeah, as a way to prove that it's really it really works is there's so much value in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like marketing can be this elusive concept for so many people, small to huge companies. And one of the things that has always stood out to me about category design work in general is that it doesn't depend on marketing. I mean, it is your marketing, but it doesn't it doesn't have this feel of, "Oh, we're gonna design your Facebook ads to make you stand out. Oh, we're gonna design your content plan to have you stand out." It's deeper than that, and I'd love for you to speak a little bit to, um, how CEOs or the clients that you're working with, founders, um, really feel about doing that more personal work on their brand, because so many times people like think that, oh, you're going to teach me or you're going to do my Facebook ads for me or Google ads or whatever, and that's going to drive this ROI for me. And I think this deeper work is more difficult for people.
Well, yeah, it is in some. So first of all, you're using words like marketing and brands and
Mhm.
stuff, and which is absolutely downstream for what we're doing.
Yes.
I mean, the first thing that we will always tell a company that calls us is this is strategy and it's CEO level, and
Yes.
because you need to understand the category you're creating, how you're framing it, what the path is from here to 5 years out,
Mhm.
before you can give anybody a marketing message. Uh, you
Right.
know, you have to. I mean, you're really starting with understanding what product you really should be building for the market that you see.
Mhm.
And so it's yeah, we had one client recently, a fairly large client, it was just pre-IPO company, and they'd been around for 20 years, went through this process,
Mhm.
uh, you know, landed on something that was just felt so true to them. And there was like maybe a dozen of these executives in the conference room. And when kind of everything landed, and I think I said, well, how does everybody feel? And this one guy who'd been with the company for like the whole time raised his hand and he said, I feel embarrassed. It was like, why do
Oh,
you feel embarrassed? He said, well, I'm feeling embarrassed because why couldn't what we came up with seems so obvious to us, but why couldn't we do it? And I said, like, it's like trying to be your own psychologist. I mean,
yeah.
you sometimes you need that outside perspective, an outside that has a different lens on things
Mhm.
to actually bring it out of you. We didn't tell them what business they told us, but through these tools, they were able to tell us in a different way than they ever had before.
Yeah. And that really, opens up so much, for a already successful company. So many times they're bootstrapped in the beginning and they skip over the foundational work. I notice that all the time. What's the mission, vision, values? Where do you see yourself in 5? Like, they've never thought about those things because they're so busy running a successful company.
Well,
So, that's really
eh,
cool.
yeah, yeah. Well, and also, I mean, they may think of them, but they don't actually like codify them, which is also
Mm,
part of the problem.
mhm,
But yeah, and one of the reasons that one of the other reasons that we wrote the book that just came out, because it literally does give away everything that we do. But So on our Category Design Advisors website, we have something we call office hours. It's these slots that, anybody can sign up for, free 30-minute conversation with one of us
Mhm.
about category design. And most of the people who sign up are, bootstrap startups. And they can't, they could not possibly afford services and all this
Mhm.
stuff, or even the time to do it. Um, but we want those companies to have this tool.
Yeah.
And so part of what, doing this book was a way to kind of give that back and say, look, I mean, yes, it's probably more helpful to have people like us in the room and driving this kind of thing. But if you can't do that, you could pick up this book and understand how to push this through your organization yourself.
Mhm. Well, I admire that because I agree with that philosophy. Uh, when I was starting as an entrepreneur, um, let's just say before the internet, we don't need to talk about how many years ago. Um, there was no one there was no books on what I was doing. So it was really just a discovery process for me. Then coming into the online space in 2010 as a coach, well, this is totally different. And it was really the people who gave away their frameworks and their process that really helped me get started and really have been the foundation of that success. So I love that you said that because there are so many people who can't swing working with me. It's why I have something for $97 a month. It's like a give back to people. And this book is so much that. I'm only halfway through. Um, but I already knew what it was gonna be like to read it just from reading your other books. Tell us a little bit about this authorship of yours and what that journey has been. I mean, as a journalist, I'm sure you did a lot of writing, but a book is so much different and such a much bigger commitment.
It, yes, it is. And the thing about a book that's so different from an article is that um,
Mhm.
it sits on your shoulders for the entire, like, whatever, 18 months, 2 years
Yeah.
that it to do it. And it's like this weight you carry around every
Mhm.
single day.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I mean, my first book came out in 1995 called The Mega Media Shakeout. And it was literally the first book that I think ever came out about what's going to happen as media turns digital.
Mm.
And it happened to land in April of 1995, just as, you know, Netscape and everything else like hit, and everybody started to become aware of this internet thing. It was actually crazy because I uh, I knew nothing about like speaking or being in front of
Mhm.
people, and suddenly, because of this book, I got pulled in front of boards and in front
Yeah.
of 5,000 person conferences. I look back, I probably was embarrassingly terrible. I had to
You were very futurist thinking in that book.
yeah, yeah. Well, I just yeah. Anyway, um but because that had such success, it gave me an opening to do something else. And then I followed that up with a biography about Thomas Watson, who built IBM. That was a huge critical success. And that just led to a series of, but then I found this path of, which I really loved, of collaborating with people that I thought were really interesting and smart.
Mhm.
And uh, so I've now co-authored, I guess at least more than half of the books that I've written have been co-authored with a CEO, or the Play Bigger team, or venture capitalists.
Mhm.
And that's been a very good path, because I get to tap into their knowledge. It's a collaborative process. I'm not ghostwriting for them. I'm actually working with them.
Right.
And and then they have the money to spend in the cloud on the back end to like do some real marketing, which is nice since book publishers don't do much of that anymore.
Yeah.
So it's been actually a really a really good path, and I'm still doing it.
Well, that opens up a great question about relationships with your clients. You know, you spoke a little bit about that you really don't do a lot of marketing for category design advisors. It's kind of like a word of mouth thing. And so what has the book writing collaborative process, what has that opened up, you know, as people work with you, right? They get to know you so much better. What has that opened up for referrals and just that long-term relationship with clients?
Yeah, good question. I think there's a couple of different things. It's a little bit circular. So
Mhm.
yes, I do I mean, I wrote 4 books with Hemant Taneja, who's the CEO of General Catalyst. Um, Introduced me to General Catalyst world,
Mm.
so I've done work with a handful of GC companies because of that connection, or
Yeah.
helped by that connection at the very least. So that certainly has happened. But the other thing that's happened is because I've been in the middle. uh, I'm not I'm not just a consultant sitting on the outside and
Yeah.
looking in. I'm in the middle of because especially with the VCs, I'm in the middle of every development. They're introducing me to the newest, coolest companies that are coming along. They're looking at trying to get ahead of the trends that are happening. So I'm
Mhm.
constantly exposed to that, and I'm bringing that into the room with the companies that we work with, and especially important in the whole category design process, because
Yeah.
category design is about how do you find a new space, and frame it differently from anybody else. And so I'm exposed to so much that I can sit in the room and they can be talking about something, and I'm able to say, look, I know there are 4 other companies that are going to say that are out there saying the same thing. If we're going to
Mhm.
go down that path, we're just like fighting for somebody else's category. We got to go in a little bit of a zigzag here.
Yeah.
Uh, or on the other hand, able to say like, look, I've been exposed to a lot in that space. What you're saying sounds really interesting and new. Let's double down. So
Yeah.
that's something I'm able to bring because of the other book work.
Well, I think what I love about that and why it resonates is I've always thought that competitive intelligence is one of the biggest assets you can spend time on as a business owner, knowing the products on the market, knowing the other companies who do what you do, not from a jealousy or envy space, but from a what do they do well? What don't they do well? And like with books, for example, there's thousands upon thousands of sales books. I look at the negative comments. What was a book missing that people wanted? And competitive intelligence can be very, very helpful. What does that process look like with your company? Like how do you recommend somebody dive down into that competitive intelligence work?
Yeah, well, let me tell you what I think is the most powerful thing that came out of this, 10 years. So the book is called The Category Creation Formula for a reason.
Mhm.
Um, and so you mentioned like, being in the field, working with, you start to learn things. And
Yeah.
um, so over time, as we were doing this, you started realizing like, okay, there seemed to be a set of patterns here. The companies that do this well think in these particular the order of things. And at first it's kind of like it's a big blob here and a big blob here and a big blob here, and you kind of like,
Mhm.
but I kept wanting to simplify and simplify. Like, how can we get this down to something I could just put on a whiteboard and drive a discussion? And so over sort of that process, and this gets to your question about competitive intelligence too. Um, we came up with this very simple formula, call it a formula, but I'll explain what. There's 3 pieces to it. And I'll explain what they are. So it's context plus missing plus innovation equals a new market category. And it's very important that it's in that order. And that's not the way most companies do things, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so most companies, by the way, just will, for the most part, we've got this innovation. We thought of this cool new product. Now let's figure out like what to do with it, right?
Mhm.
What's the market that wants it, or how do we sell it, right? So in this process, it basically starts with, we're going to put your company, your product, everything aside. The first conversation we want to have is this thing called context. And context is everything that's happening around your target audience. And that means what's changing. What are the new technologies that are coming into play that are changing things? What are the new they could be socioeconomic things that are happening. A war in the Middle East may be changing
Mhm.
your supply chains, or or your costs, or who knows what, of your target audience. Social changes. Every, we want to have a conversation about all of that, and also, you know, what other what other technologies are they using? What do people hate?
Yeah.
What is actually working for them? If we have that really deep discussion about this thing we call context, um, what starts to emerge is a way to talk about what's missing in this new context. And
Mm.
what's missing is usually either um, a new problem that's being created by that context. I mean, think of all the new problems that AI is creating, as much as it's creating new solutions, right? It's creating all sorts of new problems.
Yeah.
Um, or are there problems that are not being adequately solved in the past context, but the new context gives us a different way to solve those, a new and different way to solve those problems much better. For instance, companies may have assembled, uh, you know, 30 different point solutions, and now it's getting crazy trying to manage all those point solutions. And now with AI, if there's a way to consolidate all of that and maybe create something that's much simpler and easier to use, more powerful, whatever. So if you have that context discussion and see what starts to emerge as what's missing in this new context, it becomes pretty easy to see, okay, we could create this innovation, this new thing, to solve this missing in this new context. And if you see that, now you're seeing, not only are you seeing something that doesn't exist yet that needs
Mhm.
to exist, but you're also seeing the truth. You're not clouding yourself with, like, I think this is cool, and so I'm going to put it out there. um, you're actually seeing something that the market is going to need and demand if you put it out there. Because if you are able to tell a particular market, I understand what's happening around you, I understand what's like really frustrating you, what's missing now in this new environment, and at that point you've got that person's attention, because like it's like, okay, yeah, you understand. And if I describe this thing that should exist to solve that, then
Mhm.
then they're willing to hear you say, like, okay, now here's my product and my company and why we're the ones that can bring this to you. And it's a much more um, it, inviting way to market something. First of all, to see the product you should build, but also then to put that message out there, than just saying, like, here's my product, you figure out what to do with it, which is
Right.
what tech companies do.
Yeah, and what I love so much here is that it's the seeing of those opportunities that this has helped me do. I'm a product of learning this stuff, and it's helped me understand my ideal client in a whole new way, but also understand that I was my ideal client when I first came into the online space. And understanding that, what did I want? And I just said yesterday, and you're going to laugh at this, I've created over 60 offers for myself, different, things I've sold in the online space as I grew as a coach and changed and developed. And so out of 60 offers, I had four that were wildly successful. I mean, wildly successful, and numerous others that sold absolutely nothing.
Right.
And well, everybody thinks everything is successful that launches. It's not. Note to self. Um, but those four really successful ones all had the same thing in common, the same traits in common. And the number one trait for me was that I created something that I needed myself. I couldn't find it to buy it, so I created it.
Mm-hmm.
Huge lesson for
Yeah,
me
yeah.
as an entrepreneur. And I think fear keeps a lot of people from creating something different. Do you notice that as
Well,
well?
it's harder.
It's
Um,
hard. It is harder,
sure.
way harder.
So look, you say you see a successful market category.
Mhm,
It's much easier to say, okay, I see that there's a big audience for that kind of thing. I think I can build something that's a little bit faster or
mhm.
20% cheaper or something like that, or whatever.
Yeah,
And it becomes easier to tell people about it because it's like there's a reference point. I'm making this, it's like it's a better version of this. And I mean, look, there's thousands and thousands of companies that do that and are decent or even
mhm,
good, really good businesses.
yeah,
That's not to denigrate that at all. But there are a different class of entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs who want to change the way we work and live, who want to create something new and win it over time. And it's
mhm,
those people that are the audience for what we do, because
yeah,
it is hard. I mean, because you're creating something that nobody's seen yet, so you have to be able to tell that story and you know uh, convince people that um, there's perhaps a problem that they didn't even know they had before.
yeah,
And so it's a harder path, but the rewards are greater.
yeah. Um, I I I think the harder path has always been, I love a good challenge. I love a good puzzle. Um, and a friend said to me, "You love solving problems, don't you?" And I hear that in what you're saying. Like, you solve a problem, you also saw the solution. And what has, with this new book, you've connected so many dots for me because you're actually talking about the method, the framework of it, um, which I love. But what has that process, documenting that, done for your clarity?
Documenting what specifically.
Yeah, the framework, the what we do with clients, how to do it yourself, like, actually putting it down in writing. I'm sure
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was well before the book,
Well,
but
here's what I in addition to the CEOs of VCs that I've actually done a book with,
Mhm,
because I've become known for that, I get, I don't know, half a dozen others a year that come to me and say, I want to write a book. And I
mhm,
say I can't because I'm working on it, but here, let's talk through, give you some advice, whatever. And so you brought up earlier, like a book is a huge project. It takes a lot of time. It's a very weighty thing to take on.
mhm,
And at some point, a lot of people or CEOs, whatever, will, say, but, I don't know if that's worth it, is like, and one of the things I'll say is like, okay, yeah, yes, you end up at the end with this thing that's pretty valuable. You have this book, it
mhm,
becomes a calling card. It's something that lasts forever, basically, but here's what you get that you don't think about that you get. You get discipline of thinking, because the process of having to think through your ideas, make sure that they all connect, make sure that they're clear, and putting them down in writing. That's essentially what you're doing. You're disciplining your thinking, and you come out with, at the end of it, with a much more solid set of ideas and ways to talk about them, you know, aside from the actual physical book itself, that
yeah,
is extremely valuable.
yeah,
And I look at, I see, Hemant Taneja's, he's out on the stump all the time. He's getting interviewed on CNBC and MS, whatever, and he's out, giving speeches and I see a lot of this, and I
mhm,
see how, his language and the
mm,
points that he make are all sort of coming out of the books that we wrote, not word for word, but it has impacted his thinking and his way of speaking to the world, and it's really valuable.
Yeah. Well, I love when I hear someone who can, off the cuff, talk about what they do in a different way than I heard last time. To me, that just is so prolific and so, um it's almost more appealing than someone who's following the same script every time they have a conversation. And it comes up in networking a lot that, if you go to the same group all the time, say it's 30 people, and everyone says the same introduction every single time. I help blank do blank so they don't have to blank. Ugh, boring, boring. I glaze over. I don't want to be there. And if you truly know what you do inside and out, I am a full believer that you can say it in 40 different ways,
Mhm.
depending on who you're talking to.
Sure.
And I think that is a magical skill, but also it's learnable with the right principles in place. So that's why I'm a huge fan of what you do. And I want to switch gears because we have to touch on music for a second. Um, what are you listening to right now?
And by the way, our band is playing tonight. If
Oh,
if anybody's
okay.
listening is in New York,
Yes.
there's a place called Connolly's on 45th Street near Times
Mhm.
Square. We're playing at 10 o'clock tonight. We got a gig.
Oh, can is there somewhere where I can find this? 'Cause I'm not in New York all that often, but there is a couple events this summer where I will be in your area, so that would be super fun.
Yeah, well, there's a our band is called Total Blam Blam, and we have a there's a Facebook page, there's an Instagram account. We always post
Okay.
where we're going to play, so keep an eye
All
on
right,
those.
I'm gonna put those links in the comments as well because, um, I don't know, I just think you designed who came up with the name of the band? Was it
Well,
you?
it was me, but it was I always uh, we were when we first formed, we were big into David Bowie.
Yeah.
Uh, all of us really, and so there's a song called "Suffragette City," and there's a line there where he says, "She's the total blam blam."
Mhm.
That stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, and I I love music, and I think I love most is what it does for your mood and your spirit, and it can lift you up, it can calm you down. I have my songs I listen to before I go on stage to give a talk. I have things that I can listen to relax me or, decompress after a long day, and I just think music is such a gift, so I love that you do that too.
Well, thanks. And so just as a little bit a left turn. So what's happened in the last I don't know, couple of so I always since I was young loved writing music, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of music that I write. But of course, in a band, and I've a whole treasure trove of songs, and in a band, you only play a small fraction of those because everybody else has to like them too,
Yeah.
um, and uh, and I never really seriously recorded um, and a couple of years ago, I got introduced to this producer in New York, who's very like-minded in terms of musical tastes and things like that, but also he's a multi-instrumentalist, so he can play
Mm,
everything I can't play. And we started recording together. Absolutely love working with him. His name is Tony Calabro. Um, and now in the past couple of years, I put out two of my own albums of songs, that I've written and we produced and created with Tony.
nice.
Uh, and that has been a later in life joy, and I plan to keep doing it. It's I just actually love the recording process. It's very, he's very creative. He adds a lot to it. Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful.
So glad. So glad you're doing that. And it's incredible to just witness the creativity, right? And the way that you put your genius out into the world with different creative projects. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for being a connection and being game for these conversations. I know my audience appreciates you and your work, and just really excited to bring more category design and your unique genius to my tribe.
Well, thanks for having me on, Suzanne. It's always a pleasure.
You're so welcome.
I'm going for that 5-time,
Oh, okay.
whole thing,
Yeah,
so.
I think that's gonna be a thing now. If it's a thing on Saturday Night Live, that was one of my dreams when I was younger, to actually be on Saturday Night Live. So I got told that that just wasn't possible. So I went to my second career choice, which was to be a wildlife photographer, and that wasn't possible either, apparently. So somewhere along the line, I ended up in the medical field. So I don't know. That maybe I could bring back all of those things now in
Might
my
have
50s, right?
to. I know.
Why not? Why not? Well, thanks again, Kevin. I will share all of your links below this video and in our show notes. And if you're in New York, check out Total Blam Blam tonight. Love it. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.